Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Black Bear. So what Black Bear is essentially about is we center on this character of Allison, and she is this screenwriter of sorts, and so she's gone over to this remote lake house in a way to kind of get some inspiration for her filmmaking. She runs into this couple that's there, and what at first just seems like, a place for her to gain some inspiration, very quickly starts to turn to something far more serious when throughout the night we start to see there's a lot of manipulation. There's a lot of clashing between the couple, and it really starts to get them to question their loyalties to each other, and even if this relationship is really going to work out, and also what Allison's true intentions really are. So Black Bear overall, I was very excited for this film. This is a film that I didn't really know all that much about, but after watching the trailer, I was extremely intrigued by it. It looked like a film that was going to be something very different. It looked like it was going to be something very unexpected, and I really did not know how this film was. I was really pulling for this film to be something special, and it absolutely is. This is a very, very different film than you're expecting for sure, but it is easily, I think, one of the most fascinating and well put together of the entire year that I've been thinking about for a long time now. I watched this film like 2 weeks ago, and I'm still very much thinking about it, but we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. Easily, that is one of the best elements of this entire film. I think if the cast was not as good as they were here, this film really wouldn't be as good, and there really aren't that many actors in this film. It's definitely a smaller piece in that sense, but all the actors do a great job. Easily, though, the big standout of this film is Aubrey Plaza, who I think gives a phenomenal performance here, and I'm very happy to say is one of her best performances yet. As the character of Allison, she does a really great job. There's a lot required out of her as a character, though, because Allison is very closed off, but she also is someone that is very forward in the way that she comes across. When she's acting towards Christopher Abbott, you can tell that she's trying to flirt with him in some sense, but then at the same time, you think there might be a more sinister intent there, and I think she did a really good job with that. But especially in the third act of this movie, she has some truly amazing work that is among the best work I've ever seen from her. And I've always really liked Aubrey Plaza as an actress, but I feel like it hasn't been till lately where she's been picking projects that actually really do showcase how great she is, and this film absolutely does that. I think she absolutely anchors this entire film. I loved what she ended up doing here. It's hard to really get into everything that she does in this film, but there's one breakdown scene that she has in the third act, and I just was so stunned by how good it was. I loved what she ended up doing in this movie. I think she absolutely deserves all the love, and I hope moving forward she's able to continue acquiring more projects just like this one, because she definitely should be doing more work like this for sure. She was absolutely phenomenal here. The same goes for both Christopher Abbott and Sarah Gadden, who I thought both did a really good job in this movie. Christopher Abbott, I thought especially, was very impressive because he's another one of those characters where you're very conflicted as to where he really stands in the movie, and he really isn't afraid to get to really dive deep into the darker depths of this character, what this character is willing to do, what he really wants out of this whole thing. I thought he just did a really good job with that overall, and Sarah Gadden as well, I thought was very impressive in this movie. You can see how suspicious she is of what her husband has been, or what her, boyfriend has been doing with Allison, and I really liked her character. I really liked her performance a lot here. I think these three work so well together. I think they're definitely one of the best parts of the entire film, and I don't think the film would be nearly as good if it wasn't for their performances here. But now I really want to get to the directing and the writing, because that is something that I think a lot of people are not ready for. Lawrence Michael Levine's directing in this film is some of the most impressive that I have seen all year, because he's so confident in what he's doing. This is not a director I'm overly familiar with. I know he's done some other projects here and there, but he's really acting like this is, he's acting as if he's a director that everyone knows and that people are going to put their full trust in with whatever he ends up doing. And I love directors like that. I love ones that aren't afraid to take chances. And Levine is absolutely one of those kind of directors, because what he's able to do with this film, I think, is very interesting. Yes, this film, from the trailer, yeah, it definitely has some very thrilling elements to it, even some horror elements to it, but it's also very much a black comedy in many ways. I mean, there are a lot of funny moments throughout this film, but the film is always trying to aim to be a bit more, and I think the way that he was able to do that was really well done. It's a style that's very hard to really talk about all that much, but I think Levine did it very well. And something else to know going into this movie is that a lot of the film is very much a passion project for Levine. A lot of it is kind of loosely based on situations that he's had with his wife before, and you really do get to see that throughout the film. You really can understand why he decided to direct this overall, and I thought his directing was just absolutely fantastic here. But the screenplay to this film is really just something that took my breath away, because I mean it when I say this is a film that, even if you've seen the trailer, you need to go in knowing as little as possible, because this film is really not what you think it is. Yes, the film is about what I told you it's about, but it also is about something else entirely. The movie, honestly, is kind of like two different movies in one, and that sounds very convoluted. That sounds like it would be a mess, but trust me when I say it is the best approach that this film could have possibly taken, because what he's able to do in that way is he's able to take both he's able to tell this story in the way that he really wants to. Black Bear is a film about a lot of things. I mean, the film wants, of course, to talk about, things like what a filmmaker does to make a movie and things like that. That's definitely a part of it. But I think more than anything, it's a film about relationships. And especially when it comes to conversation in relationships, or the lack of conversation within a relationship, especially when you look at our main couple in this movie of Christopher Abbott and Sarah Gadden. You start off the movie, you think these two are well off, you think they're in a good place, but as the film goes on, you start to realize there's a lot of things they disagree with on, whether it's the fact that Sarah Gadden is a feminist and Christopher Abbott is almost mocking it, or the fact that Sarah Gadden feels a certain way about Allison, but Christopher Abbott doesn't. They always seem to be disagreeing in this movie, and I think the film kind of works as sort of relationship counsel for a lot of people. It really is, because a lot of the film is just these two kind of bickering back and forth, but you're so riveted by it because it just feels so real. It feels like this is a couple that generally does care about one another, but they seem to bring out the absolute worst in each other, and it's all about how they can kind of like move forward in that way. And I think the film did a really good job with delving into that. But then Allison as a character as well, I think, is very well realized, because she very much is kind of a blank slate in this movie. You're not really sure where she stands here. Why is she so obsessed with this couple? Why are they the thing that's going to give her this inspiration? What even is she writing? These are things that are very unclear to us as an audience. And I already talked about how good Plaza is in this role. There's a lot of moments where she's just kind of doing a lot of the, she's relying a lot on just her emotions rather than her actually saying words, and I think that's very impressive. But still, I think throughout the film, you really do understand where Allison is coming from. You understand why she's doing what she's doing, and I think the film did a really good job with that overall. Allison's a very complex character in that way, and I think that was something I really did like about this film. I mean, again, while the couple's there, the film really is all about Allison, and where they ended up taking her is really not what I was expecting at all, but it was very effective, and I think the film does a really good job with that. But the other thing you don't know going into this movie is that it's very meta, and it mainly concerns the second half of the film. I can't really get into how it is so meta, but it really does a good job, I think, of starting to blur the lines between what's reality and what's fiction. I think throughout the film, you're not going to be able to tell, like, is this actually going on, or is this all in Allison's head? You know, the film will play with you, will play with your mind a lot in that way, and that was something else that I was very riveted by with this movie. You know, there were a lot of moments that were very much throwing me off, but not in a way where I found it to be alienating. I found it to only make the movie that much more interesting in that way, and I really did end up appreciating that of this film. And again, I think there are other topics that the film wants to dive into as well. The idea of life suddenly becoming art. You know, Allison is, writing the screenplay throughout this movie, and, obviously Sarah Gadden's character feels some type of way about that. She doesn't like what's going on here. She doesn't like the way that she's fraternizing with Christopher Abbott, and you start to realize how the lines are starting to blur there, and I think that's something else that the film just does a really good job with. And again, I think, like I said, the film is two films in one, and I think that's going to throw a lot of people off, but for me, I think it only makes the film that much stronger. And I'm not gonna lie, there are a lot of things in this movie that I don't fully understand. It took me a while to fully grasp onto what this movie is really trying to talk about, but I think by the end of this film, you will at least have a general sense of what the film is trying to do, what the purpose of everything is, and I think that's something that Levine did a really good job with. The dialogue here is also really good. Just watching these characters interact, you're so riveted by what they're talking about in their conversations, and I just thought Levine's writing here was just really well done. It's very daring. It's unlike really anything you've seen, I think, and again, I would love to dive more into it, but trust me when I say you want to go into this film knowing as little as possible, and it just makes it that much better in the end. But the cinematography in this film is also really well done, especially because so much of it is pretty much in the same location. You're in this woodsy type area. It's not necessarily a cabin in the woods, but it's a lake house, so you kind of feel like you're trapped there. It's a place that's inviting at first, but as the film goes on, it really starts to feel very claustrophobic and like you're kind of just stuck with them. And I think that also ties into an idea of relationship, the idea that you can tell that Sarah Gadden's character feels very much trapped, like she wants to get away from this, but she really can't, but she also kind of feels trapped in her relationship. And I think the cinematography really resembles that very well here, and I really did appreciate that overall. And I just thought that the cinematography as a whole was just visually stunning in this film. I mean, there's a really interesting narrative technique that they do. There's this motif we keep coming back to, and I don't fully know what it means, but I think that it really worked with the cinematography, and I really did like that a lot. The score here, I think, is also really good. It's very haunting, but again, it also really keeps you invested, and I really did appreciate that for sure. And the editing. This film is only around 106 minutes long, and I do think while it could have been a little bit longer to fully dive into some things, it's very well edited, especially when it decides to end in that first half and dive more into that second movie. I thought was brilliant, and I love the way the film was edited. I think that's one of my favorite elements of this film, is just the way that it's edited overall. And so again, I think there's a lot of things this film does do very well. My only real flaw with this movie, I would say, is really just a couple things here and there. It's hard to tell through this movie what Allison's motives really are. Sometimes they're just a little bit unclear, and that can be kind of frustrating as a viewer. And I also did feel that there are some characters that appear in the second half of this movie, and I did not feel like they were dived into very much at all. I wish we could have gotten a little bit more of a look into them before things really started to escalate in the way that they did, and I wish they could have done more there. But honestly, the way the movie ends as well, I think is going to piss off a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people kind of just like annoyed by how the film wrapped up, but I thought it was perfect. Why? Because it's one of those endings that constantly has had me guessing, and it's not one of those endings that had me guessing in a way that frustrated me. I've just been thinking back at this ending, and having so many different interpretations of it, and I think that's what a really good ambiguous ending can do, and that's something that Black Bear I think does very well for sure. Overall, this is just such a different kind of movie. It's very much a genre bend in that way. It's very meta. It takes a look at relationships in a way that we rarely do see in films. It's got a standout performance from Aubrey Plaza. It's got a really interesting screenplay to it overall, and it's a film that I really think could have failed in many areas, and the fact that it doesn't, it just made the film that much stronger overall. It's definitely not going to be for everyone. I think some people will just be a little too confused and or annoyed by some of the decisions this movie decides to take, but for me, it definitely was right up my alley. This is easily one of the most ambitious films that I have seen all year. It's also very much one of the most impressive. I very much recommend checking it out, and I am going to give Black Bear overall an A-. But over, guys, in my review of Black Bear, the most guys saw this movie, all left your thoughts, and I'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.